So just a couple quick notes. If you have questions, please just use the chat feature. I will keep my eye on the chat feature. We are going to take questions primarily at the end. I'm not going to be able to look at the chat feature throughout the whole thing while I'm talking, but I will take questions at the end. So feel free to type them in there. I can always scroll back and revisit anything that was in the presentation. But let's get started. Here's our agenda for today. We're going to talk about the general course of studies for freshman year and what the schedule looks like. We'll talk about electives, math, fine arts, and language. I've got a couple folks from our language departments here, the modern language department chair and the classics department chair. They will also give a little pitch for their language offerings. We'll talk about the placement form, and then just some important dates, and of course, we'll take questions. All right, so let's get started. So the general course of studies you can see here on the screen is there's 6 core classes: Foundations of Faith, English 1, Global History 1, Biology 1. Those 4 classes here, everybody takes. There's no levels or anything like that. Then we've got math. Most students, it's Algebra 1 or geometry, and then language. And again, we'll talk about the languages later, but Spanish, French, Chinese, Latin. And then students will take a fine arts course and a health and wellness course. So there's not a ton of options or a ton of choices for freshman year. A lot of the stuff is sort of like the core requirements that all students have to take, especially those 4 key classes that I mentioned. Math and language is the area where not every student might be doing the same thing. But let me show you for grade 12, I know I'm skipping ahead here, and this is not really what this webinar is really about, but I wanted you to see for grade 12, most of these are electives. They have to take a theology elective, they have to take English 4 or AP. But then after that, they might take 2 sciences or 2 social studies or, a second language or whatever it might be. So I want it clear that as the students matriculate through high school, their options get more and more, right? The freshman year, not as many options, but as they move through, they'll get lots of options as they go on. This is what a typical schedule looks like. So we've got seven periods, or 7 blocks, I should say, 7 periods in a day. Mondays, Tuesdays, and Fridays, the classes are 44 minutes long. All the classes meet. And on Wednesdays and Thursdays, the classes are 75 minutes long, and the classes meet on either Wednesday or Thursday. You also will see that we have an advisory period, Mondays, Tuesdays, and Fridays for 10 minutes after first period. Students have lunch during 5th period. You can see that 5th period is extra long because they'll have a half an hour for lunch and then go to class, or they'll have class first and then go to lunch. On Wednesdays, we've got the first period doesn't start till 9:10, so it's a late start for the faculty to have time to collaborate. The school will obviously be open at the normal time. Kids come in all the time early, go to the library, go to the cafeteria, whatever it might be, but the first period doesn't start till 9:10. But again, this is sort of what a typical schedule looks like. This student that I'm showing you here has, his biology class. He's taking Latin 1. He's in Foundations of Faith, English 1, Global History 1, and then he's got geometry for freshmen. And we'll talk about what the impacts are on the schedule, depending on what fine arts class your son chooses, and that sort of thing. Okay, but this is what the schedule typically looks like. Let's talk about math. All right, so generally speaking, most freshmen are in Algebra 1. There'll be some students that are in geometry or geometry honors, and there would be a very small few that might be in Algebra 2. To determine which level of math each freshman is in, we have the students take a placement test. So the placement test is May 31st at 8:30. It's approximately 45 minutes. It's at BC High. If your son is in a pre-algebra class right now, then he should be in Algebra 1 next year. There's no reason for him to take a placement test. Anybody who does not take a placement test will be placed in Algebra 1. We don't look at, recommendations from other schools or what other schools think that should be the next course for their students. We do a placement test for us. What we call Algebra 1 might be different from what another school or district or might say is Algebra 1. So anybody who wants to take something above Algebra 1 needs to take a placement test with us. Again, if you want them to take Algebra 1, then there's no need to take a placement test. I wanted to show this progression on here because I wanted people to see that no matter what level students start in, whether it's Algebra 1, Geometry, Geometry Honors, etc., they have the opportunity to get to calculus as a senior, which I know is a priority for a lot of students. So I just want to put that out there. No student is set back by being in Algebra 1 as a freshman. Frankly, most of our students are in Algebra 1 as freshmen. They still have every opportunity to get to calculus AP. And if they're not in honors, that's okay. Like nobody's locked into a certain track. They can go from non-honors to honors, or frankly, from honors to non-honors. It happens. All right. I do see one question there. Is algebra considered pre-algebra? No, Algebra 1 is a full year algebra course. So most students, like a lot of our students in our own middle school, are in pre-algebra as 8th graders. They are definitely distinct courses. But again, I just wanted to put this on here so people could see that, we want to get students in the right place. It's not about gatekeeping just to gatekeep. And no matter which place they end up freshman year, they've got an excellent path ahead of them to take high-level math classes. But again, if your son is even if your son is in an Algebra 1 class now, he should still take a placement test to determine whether he should be in Algebra 1, Geometry Honors, etc. Again, we don't really look at prior schools' recommendations or grades or anything like that. We have a placement test that we've got a lot of years of data on that really help us accurately, place students in their freshman year math class. And as a former math teacher myself, it's really important that students have a strong foundation in Algebra 1 because everything that happens after that, as you know, mathematics is very much a spiral curriculum. Everything after that kind of delves into Algebra 1. And if they don't have a strong foundation in Algebra 1, they won't be as successful as they should be. All right. So that's math. Let's talk about fine arts. This is where your son has a lot of choice in what he wants to do his freshman year. So in general, students need to accumulate 1.5 credits in fine arts by the end of their senior year. All the full year classes, English, math, science, social studies, etc., all those full year classes are worth 1 credit. The fine arts classes vary in credit. Some are a quarter credit, some are half credit, some are 3/4 credit. And so they need to accumulate 1.5 credits by the time they graduate. So they have 4 years to do this. Okay. And I'll go through there's 3 basic options that students will have for freshman year to kind of get started on that fine arts requirement. We certainly have students who go beyond the 1.5 credits. This is by no means meant to be a cap on fine arts classes, but it is a requirement that we have. We do value the arts. It's an important part of the boys' formation to kind of tap into that creative side of their growth. All right, so let's go through the different options for fine arts. Here's option number 1. And this group are all the bands and choirs that students can participate in. So these groups meet before or after school for rehearsals. And a lot of them require the students to know how to play an instrument already. So for example, the concert band, chamber orchestra, jazz rock ensemble, jazz big band, and guitar orchestra, there are auditions for these that happen at the beginning of the school year. Students need to know how to play the instruments already. These aren't for beginners. All right. So you can see that most of these are half credit. The concert band is 3/4 credit because there's more performances. But these meet after school all year long, twice a week, most likely. And so that's why it's worth more credit, right? Because it's more frequent and it's all year. So that is an option if your son is musically inclined, if he plays an instrument. We also have a concert choir that meets before school all year long, again, twice a week. So you don't need any prior experience in singing to be in the concert choir. It is for everybody. There is an audition, but it's mainly just to determine the sound of your son's voice. Is he a tenor or is he a bass? Because that will determine which group he's in and which day he comes to choir in the morning. But students need to be able to get here early, before the school day starts. The first period doesn't start till 8:20. That's when the first bell is. But this class, the concert choir, meets around 7:30. So that has to be in consideration if your son's considering joining the concert choir. Liturgical musicians is similar. It's a mixture of singers and instrumentalists. So if he wants to be a singer in liturgical musicians, he doesn't need any prior experience. That also meets twice a week before school. It's half credit. This group performs all of our school liturgies. If your son is going to be an instrumentalist in that group, he would need to have prior experience and be able to demonstrate that he can play whatever instrument he plays. But again, that's an option. That meets before school as well. So that's option number one, are sort of these bands and choirs that meet outside of the school day. Option number two are foundations classes. So these are classes that are half credit. They meet basically every day like any other class, except for only half the year. So either first semester or second semester, most likely second semester. But we have two foundations classes, one in the visual arts and one in the theater arts. These are for students who are particularly passionate about visual art or theater. Like if it's visual, I'm talking about drawing, painting, photography, that kind of thing. And then theater arts, obviously, is anything from the acting to the stage production, the lighting, the sound, all that stuff, set design. So if your son has a particular passion or talent in either of those areas, then I would recommend that he take a foundations class. Taking a foundations class will allow them to take higher level fine arts classes later on in their time at high school. So, for example, a student who takes visual foundations will set him up to take something like drawing and design honors as a sophomore, and then maybe sculpture, and then maybe studio art AP as a senior, something like that. The same thing goes for theater foundations. That's going to set him up to be an active participant in our school productions, that kind of thing. So, again, that's the second option. And these meet during the school day. They meet like any other class, except only for half the year, either first semester or second semester, probably second semester. All right. The third option are quarter credit electives. These are very much for beginners. And the students need no prior experience to take any of these classes. We've got some in the theater, like acting or stagecraft, some in visual arts, intro to drawing, digital photography, music performance, guitar ensemble, piano ensemble, or voice studio. So those classes are music, but they are performing, right? So your son, say he wanted to take guitar one, he doesn't need to have any prior guitar experience, but he does need access to a guitar at home. So if he doesn't have a guitar at home, I suppose you could get one, but or same thing with piano. If there's no keyboard or piano at home, that wouldn't be a great option. Even if he doesn't know how to play it, though, that's not the issue. The issue is got to have access. So, and voice studio is obviously a singing course. Again, doesn't need any prior talent or experience in those areas. But we also have some music classes that are not performance based. They're more studying music, like bebop to hip hop and pop. It's an evolution of American music. Music production is about like using computer tools, like GarageBand or something else to create music. And then music for media is about like music that goes along with, say, television, video games, movies, that sort of thing. So again, those aren't really instrumental classes, but they are in music. All right. So these are quarter credit. They meet twice a week for one semester. Again, most likely second semester, but so they might meet every other day, which is why, again, how much credit is awarded is based entirely on how often the class meets, what the commitment is, etc. All right. And I will say something else about the fine arts. Like, there's obviously several areas your son can go into: visual arts, music, theater, all that, all those different areas, but they're not locked into any of them. They could do, acting freshman year, then they could do drawing sophomore year, and then they could do, something in music junior year, etc. So none of these are like choices they need to make for the rest of their, career. But if they wanted to do that, they could. They could do intro to drawing, and then drawing and design honors, and then sculpture, and then architectural drawing. And so there are pathways that they could take. But I want to also just reiterate that whatever he chooses freshman year does not mean that that's what he's locked into for 4 years. He could do concert choir freshman year and then something else sophomore year, et cetera. But these are all the options that he has. So again, he should be choosing something in one of these three buckets, not like, oh, he'll do concert choir and band and theater foundations and drawing to try to get all of this done in 1 year. It will not be possible. The schedule will not allow all of that to happen. Okay. Let me just give you a visualization of what it looks like on their schedule, these different options. So here's the schedule. Again, same one I showed earlier. I highlighted the free blocks that exist in first semester. During that free block, that is where your son will have health. For example, he will have to take a health class during freshman year. It meets not quite the same as every other class, but it's a half credit. But that would happen in those green spaces on the screen. If he were to do a quarter credit class, this is what it would look like. He would have, say, this student here is taking intro to drawing. He would have that on Monday and Thursday, and then the next week he would have it on, Tuesday and Friday or something. It meets twice a week, so he still has a free period in there, parts of the week. All right. If he does a half credit fine arts class, like a theater foundations or visual foundations, you can see here he doesn't have a free period built into his schedule anymore because that class will meet every day like any other class. But again, only for a semester. It's not all year. It's just for a semester. And then if you did a choir or band before or after school, you can see that he still has a free period during the day because he's taking his fine art outside the school day. All right. All right. So those are the fine arts options. Again, there are three different buckets. He should be thinking of one of those only. Let's talk about languages. I'm going to give you the overview of our language requirements here, and then I'm going to turn it over to a couple of my colleagues here who will talk more specifically about the languages that we offer. All right. So, and in general, right, we've got a 3-year requirement for students to take the same language in the high school. It has to be in the high school. His years of taking a language in middle school do not count towards that requirement. Okay. So he needs 3 years of the same language in the high school. We offer Chinese, French, Latin, and Spanish. If your son has been taking a language, or one of these 4 languages, and might place in something more than Latin 1 or Chinese 1 or whatever it might be, then he needs to come take the placement test. Same thing like I said earlier about math on May 31st. Again, we don't really take whatever's recommended by prior schools and things like that. We've got a placement test that does a pretty good job of letting us know what level would be most appropriate. So say he's in Spanish now, he's been taking it for a few years. It would not be good for him to take Spanish 1. He could do that, but Spanish 1, all the level 1s are for people who have never taken a language before. So it would be best for him to come take a placement test. Let's find out what level would be most appropriate. It could be Spanish 1 advanced. It could be Spanish 2, Spanish 2 honors, whatever it might be. And then we'll place him that way. So again, the test is about 45 minutes. And if your son is going to take the math placement test as well, he can do both at the same day. You'll just take them back to back, maybe a little break in between, but you can take them on the same morning. And there's a form that we ask you to fill out just to let us know if you're going to come, what test you're going to come take, if you're going to take any. All right, but now I'm going to turn it over to Melissa Ewing, who is our Modern Language Department Chair, who is going to talk a little bit about the language offerings, particularly Spanish, French, and Chinese. All right, so I'm going to turn the camera over here.
Hello.
This is Melissa Ewing.
Hi, nice to meet you all. So I think what I'd like to begin by telling you is that at BC High, I think what makes our program really unique is just that we create students that are confident communicators. They're really global citizens. They're really culturally fluent and they're global thinkers. And so whether the students excel in an AP exam or they participate in an international language program, where they end up prepared to really to lead, to connect, and to make a meaningful impact, wherever they end up going after BC High. With Chinese, I think what's important for us to acknowledge, particularly now in our current global landscape, is that this need for cross-cultural understanding is more essential than ever. And Chinese is the world's most spoken language. It's really a key to that global communication and diplomacy that I think most of us can agree is what's needed today. So whether in Chinese 1 all the way up to AP Chinese, the students are really going to get real world language skills and cultural fluency. So in addition to the classes, there's really an immersive cultural experience that the students gain, whether they are beyond the classroom taking part in hands-on traditions like dumpling making, Tai Chi, whether they are doing calligraphy. We have just a very anticipated annual Chinese Idol performance that many students look forward to, whether they take Chinese or not. There's never an empty seat. I'm always keeping my fingers crossed that the fire marshal doesn't show up on that day because there's just really no room at all in that space because there's just so much love, so much joy, enthusiasm for Chinese culture that comes together in that performance. So it's competitive. It's just something that really brings a lot of really a lot of joy to our community each year. The other exciting thing is that students also have the opportunity, this is new, to travel to China where they'll be able to explore modern life, visit local families, experience authentic cultural exchange. There's also academic, cognitive benefits really to learning Chinese, which strengthens critical thinking and memory, math, and science. We often see students that are really strong in math and science also really cultivates creativity, focus, and perseverance. And there's a lot of college and career advantages when a lot of colleges look and see that students are taking a class, language that's not commonly taught. It can really help students stand out in that stand out there. So French, what I'd like to add just about French is that by senior year, most of our students in the honors program are reaching really a B2 DELF level. The DELF is just an exam that is given by the French Ministry of Education that is good for life. Our students take that their senior year in the honors program, and it really is the same. Our students end up really at the same level as students in top immersion programs like Milton High School. And we offer AP, college level courses after AP, and they're all kind of taught in a smaller class size than those typically found in other high schools, including Milton High. Our French students also go to have the opportunity to participate in the French exchange program in Lyon. And the other thing I would add about the French program is there's three of us between the middle school and the high school, and it's really just a close-knit team of teachers that get to know the students so well that there's lasting relationships between the students in those courses, but also between the students and the teachers, to the point where we really are able to write unique letters of recommendations for those students. And there's just also enriching opportunities in which we collaborate with Milton Academy with the humanities workshop, where we get to explore social justice, real world problems through the humanities, and the students present at the end of the year at the EMK Institute. So moving on to Spanish, we have students that obviously, it's a very robust program. They're achieving high levels of fluency through very engaging curriculum. And in addition to the honors and the AP course offerings that we have, students can also be selected to participate in the Pope Francis program, which is just a before school course focused on building conversational skills. There's lots of service and exchange immersion trips that are also available for students that are Spanish students, such as Argentina. We have the summer program in Argentina, Dominican Republic, Ecuador, Puerto Rico, and Guatemala. So that's all I have.
Thank you so much.
Thank
you so much. And I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Matt Allmiller, who is our chair of the classics department.
All right. Hi, folks. It's nice to meet you. I'm the chair of the classics department at BC High. I've been here for 23 years now. And I just want to, first of all, thank Miss Ewing. There's awesome opportunities for everyone to study language here. And part of my job is to teach Latin at the high school. And we offer 5 years of Latin. We offer 3 years of ancient Greek, sophomore, junior, and senior year. And I think that if your son is the kind of person who loves history, literature, storytelling, archaeology, mythology, art history, if those are in his interests, we are very, very multidisciplinary where it branches out well beyond Latin. I also teach a class in English this year, for example. I think the experience of taking Latin will really help with your son's reading and writing in English. And it'll also build for a strong framework of study. Its very nature is that it's very structured and systematic, and it can provide pretty significant benefits to just overall language acquisition in English and in Latin. Uh, I'd say that we are one of the few high schools in New England that's taught Latin continuously since 1863, and we have a really strong tradition of that. And our students go on to do pretty awesome things. They gain admission to the top schools in the country, they gain significant scholarships in different selective programs, and they don't have to go on to continue to study Latin. A lot of our students go into medicine, law, sciences, and other STEM areas beyond just humanities. It's not just kids who are involved in classics. And I can say two more things. I guess in terms of becoming global citizens, our students have the opportunity as juniors and seniors to travel abroad. And I've now done nearly 10 trips abroad with students to both Italy and Greece, and we take the classroom there. So imagine the opportunity to be on site with your teachers and classmates reading Latin in the Roman Forum and having projects there for a week in February vacation, or in Athens and in Delphi reading ancient Greek on site is an amazing opportunity. It's truly once in a lifetime. And like Melissa said, we're a small department as well. There's 5 of us, so we get to know your sons very, very well. They'll likely have one of us maybe 2 years in a row. I write a lot of excellent college recommendations every year and unique college recommendations too. And I'm fortunate and I'm very blessed to do a unique subject. So I think that's enough from me, but we really want to highlight the other options that you can take. And you can always switch languages too. If you come in as a freshman taking another language, we would absolutely love to have you maybe switch into French or switch into Chinese or switch into Latin or Spanish. It's not set based off of your 8th grade experience. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for being here. So again, we've got some great options here for languages. Again, the main things I just want to reiterate, right? 3 years of the same language. You can change languages, obviously, from entering 8th to 9th grade. You could try something new, and then if it doesn't go well, you could switch back to something else, but then you'd have to do that for 3 years. That's okay. We definitely have had students do that. But anyway, I want to thank Matt and Melissa for being here to help us kind of highlight all the great things that are happening in our language programs. So I'm almost done here. I've only got a couple more things to share. I want to point you to the course catalog, which can be found on the new student website. In here, you'll find more detailed descriptions of all of our fine arts options that I talked about, the language descriptions, etc. This is on the new student website. I want to talk about the placement form that is due Friday, May 9th. So let me just go through a couple shots of that. So the placement form really is for fine arts, math, and language. So let me go through that. So this is the link for it right here. This was included in my email to you as well. But here's the link for the form. But this is what it looks like, right? Obviously, I need your first and last name, email, hometown, current school, then a t-shirt size because he'll get a t-shirt for his class. So that's pretty straightforward. But then after that, it goes right into the fine arts choices, right? So again, there's 3 major buckets, so to speak: band and choir, foundations, and quarter credit. So he's got to pick one of those 3 areas. All right. So you can see on the screen here on the left are the bands and choirs, on the right are the foundations courses. And then here are the quarter credit options. We do need him to write into each of these spaces his first choice, second choice, third choice, and fourth choice. Most kids will get their first choice, but for the quarter credit one, sometimes I might need to go to his second choice because of scheduling reasons, etc. All right. So that's what the placement form will look like. Again, he shouldn't really be doing, a band, a foundations course, and a quarter credit class. That's not going to work. Okay. Language choice. He's got to just indicate his top choice for language and his second choice. Again, most kids will get their top choice, but it's good for us to have a backup just in case. So just indicate that. Then the placement test attendance. We just need to know who's coming, so we have enough tests and so we can plan accordingly. So just indicate which language test he wants to take, and then whether or not he's going to take the math placement test. And again, this all is done online. It's due by May 9th. If you have questions about it, feel free to email me. My email is on the screen there. And I'm happy to answer any of your questions. Again, here's the link for the new school website or new student website. This is not, you don't need any login or anything like that to access this. This is just the URL, and it's, open to everybody. So, but this website is terrific. It has all the information you need. It's got the enrollment timeline. It's got a link for the essentials guide, which I also included in my email to you a few days ago, which has like the preliminary calendar and a checklist of things to do and the placement test information. The placement, like a physical version of the placement form, is in there as well. We prefer the electronic version, but if you want to see it on paper, it's there. The course catalog is here. Information about orientation, which would be June 9th, and then another orientation for the whole class of 2029 on August 28th. So all that stuff is on this website. Summer offerings. We've got a ton of summer programming. It's a great way to meet kids who are coming here in the fall. We've got academic offerings. We've got sports offerings, specialty camps, like programming and stuff like that. Definitely check out this at this website. And again, it's a great way to meet kids. I coached in the basketball camp for years. It's an awesome way for incoming kids to meet kids before the school year actually starts. So definitely check that out. Again, just to reiterate these dates, May 9th is the placement form. Early May is when everybody will get like access to our portal. Your son will get access, you'll get access. All that stuff will happen in early May. May 31st is the placement test. June 9th is freshman orientation. You can purchase a T-Pass if you need to between July 1st and August 16th. And then we have technology setup sessions in July and August, where you and your son will come to school with the device he'll be using at school, and he'll get it all set up, connected to the Wi-Fi, download any apps he needs, get any digital textbooks he needs, get his email set up, all that stuff. All right. So again, stay tuned for more information on that. All right. Let me take some questions. I see there are some questions in the chat here that I want to scroll back and see. All right. All right. Great question about participating in sports if they're in the band. So yes, there are times when these are in conflict. For a group like the concert band, there is some flexibility. That band is usually big enough where someone can not participate in a season if they're playing a sport, and then rejoin the group in the different season. So, for example, if your son plays soccer in the fall, he doesn't do band, but then he's done with his sport. Then he can do band for the winter and the spring. Then he can do it and get credit and everything. So there is some flexibility with some of them. But some of the smaller groups, it's not as simple, right? Like chamber orchestra is a small group, or that's the string groups, or the jazz rock ensemble. That's a smaller group. If they lose someone for a whole season, that kind of derails what they're trying to do. So yeah, sometimes there is a little bit of a conflict, which sometimes makes the concert choir an option because it's in the morning. It doesn't conflict with any sports. All right. Can you choose to do a choir option and a foundations class? So technically, yes, but we would not recommend that. That would be an incredibly long day to have choir or something in the morning and then have a full day with no free periods, because that's essentially what happens when you have a foundations class. In that free block, right? There's 7 periods in a day. There's 6 core classes. That 7th block is what is used for health and a fine arts option. So like if he's got something in the morning and then goes all day with no free period, that's going to be a challenge. Again, not that it's, impossible, but it's not something that we would recommend. Will this slide deck be shared? Yes. So I can post these slides. We'll actually post a recording of the whole thing as well, but I'll post the physical slides as well. let's see here. For clarification, will ninth graders not have a free block if they take fine arts? Yeah. So let me show you again what the schedule looks like regarding depending on what fine arts they take. All right. So here's what the schedule looks like. You can see this person has a free block first semester, but again, he will have health in that free block. Not every day necessarily, but he'll have that in that free block. Second semester is where most of the fine arts will happen. And so this person here, so he's got his 6 core classes: science, language, theology, English, history, and math. But in that extra block, that F block in this particular case, that's where his fine art would go. So if he's taking a quarter credit class like this one, he won't have a free period on Monday and no free period on Thursday. He does have one on Tuesday and Friday, right? So like for a quarter credit option, he still has a free period at some point during the week. But if he does like a foundations class, like visual foundations in this example, this student here does not have a free period second semester because he's got the foundations class, which again is great. If he's passionate about visual art, that's a good thing for him to be doing. So, that's what the schedule impacts are depending on what fine arts they take. If they take a choir or band, that meets outside the school day, so he still has his free periods. All right. So just wanted to make sure that was clear. That's a good question. Let's see here. How many boys are currently taking Mandarin? It's a great question. They're generally smaller class sizes. There's probably between 10 and 15 kids usually in each of those classes. So again, it's not one-on-one instruction, but it's generally a smaller class size. It's a great program. Kids do a lot of unique things in there. Like Ms. Ewing articulated earlier, it's a lot of current relevant topics that gets discussed. There's a Chinese idol, which is very popular, which is sort of a performance and sort of a tradition in that country. It's a great program, but generally speaking, it is a smaller section or segment of students. Question about how do boys access the new student website? Yeah, the link is in the email I sent you. It's just a URL. It's just a website. We can post it or send it out to you. But he won't get access to like the school portal, with his own username and login and all that stuff till later. That's not usually till early May. Let's see here. If a student participates in like academic resource center, how does that impact time for electives and free periods, et cetera? Yeah, you're right. So he's got his 6 full year course requirements, and then an extra block is where he's got his health, his fine arts, and that's where he might visit the academic resource center if he has a free period. So again, if he takes a quarter credit class, he still has 2 free periods during the week that he could go to the ARC. If he takes a band or choir, he's got a free period, each day. But if he's in a visual foundations course, then yeah, that would limit his ability to visit the ARC during the day. Now he could still visit the ARC at lunch, before school, after school, on that Wednesday morning where we have the first period doesn't start till 9:10. He could visit the ARC in that space. So we try to have some flexibility in there no matter what option kids pick. But yeah, that is something to consider when you think about the impacts the fine arts choice has on the schedule. I see a question about laptop or iPad for high school. Great question. I think most kids at this point are operating with laptops as the cost does become more cost effective. They're definitely the younger kids, the freshmen and sophomores definitely have iPads because in our middle school here, they're all on iPads. So a lot of those kids come up and they're still using it. Maybe when they're junior or senior, they might transition to a laptop at some point. We're not like exclusively a Mac school. It's not like they need to have an iPad or an iMac or MacBook or whatever, but most of our experience in troubleshooting technological issues is with Macs. I'm personally a PC person, so definitely are plenty of kids here who've got PCs, but either is fine. But I tend to think that a laptop, and to me, frankly, a laptop is more of a productivity device, whereas an iPad to me is more an entertainment device. That's just in our experience. That's been our take on it. Is that there's just more. I know you can do a lot of the same things on a laptop that you do on an iPad, but I think the laptop, just in general, is viewed as a productivity device. I'm going to get something done with my laptop, whereas an iPad still has a little bit of an entertainment factor to it. So anyway, those are my thoughts on that. Let's see here. Yeah, so a question about drumming, right? If your son is a drummer, yeah, there's the concert band needs drummers, the jazz bands need drummers, um, and so yeah, those generally meet twice a week after school. If your son wants to do that, that's great. He should sign up for it. And then in the first month of school year, or maybe the first week or two, there's usually like a meeting or an audition that kind of sets the schedule and exactly which days. I can also share with you the email of the band director, who can give you a lot more information and the specifics on how that works. Um, but yeah, I think that's all we have right now. I don't see anybody else typing or anything. Um, but again, we recorded this. If you want to share it with your son, with your spouse, or whomever else, or watch it again, I know we went through a lot of it quickly. I'll post the slides. If you have other questions, I'll post contact information for Ms. Ewing and Ms. Rawmiller if you have any specific questions about languages. I see a quick question here about the T. Yeah, so for T users, does the school get a discount? Yeah, there's like a student T pass that they can get if they purchase it through us. Then there's at least somewhat of a discount. But yeah, question about doing band in fall and a sport. Yeah, so I did answer that question earlier. That's okay. With concert band, there is some flexibility there. With some of the other groups, it's not as flexible. Again, I'll share with you the band director's email, so just he can answer some questions for you that are more specific to that. All right, but thank you so much for all your participation. These are great questions. We're so excited about your son's coming here. It's a phenomenal place. He's going to love it. And yeah, keep the questions coming over email to myself or my colleagues here, and we'll try to get all your questions. If we don't have the answers, we'll get you to the person who does. All right. Thank you so much for everything, and I hope you have a great weekend. Hopefully the weather gets a little better. Anyway, that's all we got. Thank you so much. Bye bye.